I'm Deborah. The room fell deathly silent as the recording of my mother-in-law, Isabella Thompson, filled the air. We had gathered at our house after my 7-year-old son, Leo's funeral. His small white casket being lowered into the ground felt like yesterday. I could still see the tiny casket in the ocean of black and dark-colored clothing, and my hand gripping my husband Ryan's arm so tightly that my knuckles turned white. Isabella's voice was crystal clear, but honestly, this might be a blessing in disguise. Now you and Ryan can focus on giving me real grandchildren. Healthy ones. You're still young enough to try again. And this time you won't have to worry about defects. Ryan shot up from his seat, his face contorted with disbelief and rage. Mother, how could you? He roared. I took a deep breath and calmly said, that was just from a few minutes ago. There's more. So much more. My mind drifted back to the day Leo was born. Ryan and I were part of the upper-middle-class community. We lived in a nice suburban house, and Ryan had a stable job in finance. After 4 miscarriages, the doctors had told me that I might never have a child. When Leo arrived, even though he was born with a rare genetic condition of osteogenesis imperfecta, he was a miracle to me. Every small milestone, like the time he first held a crayon with his shaky hands, was a precious moment. But Isabella was a woman obsessed with social status and a perfect family image. She was a prominent figure in the local country club and always wanted everything to be picture perfect. From the moment Leo was born, she made it clear that he didn't fit into her vision of a Thompson grandchild. At family gatherings, she'd whisper to relatives, "It's such a pity. Ryan and Deborah could have had a normal child. Leo is such a burden on them." When Leo had a fracture during a family event due to his brittle bones, she'd say, "This isn't the place for him. Maybe you should find a babysitter next time." Ryan always tried to defend Leo. "Mom, he's our son, and we love him," he'd say. But Isabella was cunning. She'd reply, "I'm just thinking about what's best for everyone." The other kids get scared when Leo gets hurt. Despite Isabella's coldness, Leo was surrounded by love. My parents adored him and called him their little warrior. My sister would drive 4 hours just to play board games with him. Ryan's father, who passed away 3 years ago, used to spend hours teaching Leo how to play simple card games that he could manage with his limited physical strength. 2 weeks before Leo's death, his condition deteriorated rapidly. We spent those final days in the pediatric ICU, taking turns sleeping on the uncomfortable chairs beside his bed. Isabella visited only once. She stayed for 15 minutes, complained about the hospital food, and left without even saying a proper goodbye to Leo. Ryan was heartbroken, but I had long since stopped expecting anything from her. The funeral was small but full of love. Leo's teacher from his special needs school talked about his infectious laughter and how he always brightened up the classroom. Our neighbor shared how Leo would wave from his window every time she walked her cat. Ryan gave a beautiful eulogy about how Leo taught us the true meaning of unconditional love. After the funeral service, people came to our house for the post-funeral meal. I felt like a ghost, moving through the rooms, accepting condolences and forcing a smile when people shared their favorite Leo memories. My sister stuck by my side, ensuring I ate something and wasn't alone with my grief. That's when Isabella cornered me in the kitchen. I was standing by the sink, washing some utensils, trying to distract myself from the pain in my heart. She approached me with that fake smile of hers, the one that fooled many into thinking she was a kind and caring grandmother. "Deborah, dear," she said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "I know this has been tough on you." I just nodded, not trusting myself to speak. I just wanted to get through the day. Then she leaned in closer, looking around to make sure no one else could hear. In a voice she thought was comforting, she said, "But really, this could be a blessing. Now you and Ryan can have a healthy child and give me a proper Thompson heir." The plate in my hand slipped and crashed into the sink. I stared at her in disbelief. "What did you say?" I whispered. She thought I was in agreement and said, Leo was never going to have a normal life. At least now, he's at peace, and you can start anew. Something inside me snapped, but instead of falling apart, I felt a cold determination. I had started recording Isabella's cruel comments about Leo years ago. At first, it was just for my own protection, in case Ryan ever doubted her true nature. As Leo's condition worsened, I knew this evidence could be crucial. My phone was already in my hand, a habit I'd developed whenever Isabella was around. The recording app was always ready. This time, I had captured every single poisonous word. Isabella, you're absolutely right, I said calmly. This changes everything. She beamed, thinking she'd finally found common ground with me. I'm so glad you understand. We can put all this behind us now. I walked quietly out of the kitchen and into the living room, where about 40 family members and friends were gathered. Ryan was sitting with his uncle, looking completely drained. My sister was helping to serve tea. Leo's teacher was chatting with my parents near the fireplace. I cleared my throat. Excuse me, everyone. I have something to share. The room fell silent, and people turned to face me, perhaps expecting a thank you or a touching memory of Leo. I took out my phone and said, I want to share what was just said to me in the kitchen about my son, Leo. Isabella appeared in the doorway, her face turning ashen as she realized what was happening. Deborah, what are you? She started to say. I pressed play, and her voice filled the room. After the first recording ended, the silence was deafening. I then played another clip from Leo's 5th birthday party. I don't see why they keep celebrating. It's just prolonging the pain for everyone. And then one from last Thanksgiving. Deborah's fixation on Leo is not healthy. She needs to move on. With each recording, the shock in the room grew. Leo's teacher walked out, unable to listen anymore. Isabella's sister stared at her in horror. Ryan's uncle shook his head in disgust. Isabella tried to defend herself. Those recordings are out of context. I didn't mean. I interrupted her. Which part was out of context, Isabella? When you called my son a burden or when you said his death was a blessing? Ryan was looking at his mother as if he'd never seen her before. How could you say these things about Leo? About my son? Isabella's mask finally slipped completely. Your son was suffering. I was the only one brave enough to say what everyone was thinking. He was never going to be a normal Thompson. The room erupted. Ryan's cousin called her despicable. My sister told her to leave. Leo's teacher, who had returned to the doorway, said she'd never heard such vile words in 35 years of teaching special needs children. I wasn't done yet. Isabella, you talked about starting fresh and having a proper Thompson heir. But here's what you don't know. Leo wasn't my first child with osteogenesis imperfecta. I had a daughter, Ava, before him. She died when she was 4 months old. The condition comes from your family, from the Thompson genes. If Ryan and I have another child, there's a 25% chance the baby will have the same condition. Would you then say that child's death is also a blessing? Isabella's face turned completely pale, and she opened and closed her mouth like a fish, unable to speak. Get out, Ryan said softly at first, then more firmly. Get out of our house and our lives. Ryan, I'm your mother, Isabella pleaded. A mother wouldn't say such things about her grandchild, Ryan retorted. You're not welcome here anymore. Isabella looked around the room desperately, hoping to find someone to defend her, but all she saw were faces full of disgust. You'll regret this, she hissed. When you realize I was right. The only thing I regret, I said, is that Leo had to live his short life knowing his grandmother saw him as a burden. But he's at peace now, and I'll protect his memory from people like you. Isabella grabbed her purse and stormed out the door. Before leaving, she turned back and spat, You've turned my son against me. I replied calmly, I just played back your own words. You did this to yourself. After she left, the room was silent. People were at a loss for words. How could one process such cruelty, especially on the day of a child's funeral? Ryan came to me, tears streaming down his face. Deborah, I'm so sorry. I never knew she was this cruel. I held him tightly. It's not your fault. You couldn't have known. Leo's teacher approached us. I want you to know that Leo was one of the most amazing children I've ever taught. He brought so much light into our lives. Anyone who couldn't see that was blind. In the days that followed, the story spread through our family network. Isabella's siblings stopped speaking to her. Her church friends distanced themselves after hearing the recordings. The country club where she had spent years building her social standing suddenly found reasons to keep her out of events. Ryan's uncle called to apologize on behalf of the family and informed us that Isabella had been removed from the family trust fund that Leo was supposed to inherit. The money will go to the Osteogenesis Imperfecta Foundation, he said. In Leo's name. 2 weeks later, I received a letter from Isabella. Instead of an apology, she claimed that I had manipulated the recordings and turned the family against her. She threatened to sue me for defamation. I forwarded the letter to my attorney along with all the recordings I had collected over the years. The lawyer assured me that the truth was an absolute defense against defamation and that Isabella's threats were empty. A month later, Isabella tried to show up at Ryan's workplace, demanding to see him. Security escorted her out. She tried calling from different numbers, but we blocked them all. She even attempted to contact me through social media, but I had documented everything and reported her for harassment. The final straw was when she tried to visit Leo's grave. I had placed a small bench there, where I would sometimes sit and read stories to him, the stories I wished I had read to him more often when he was alive. Isabella showed up with a bouquet of flowers and a note saying she had always loved Leo. I was there, placing fresh flowers on his headstone. When I saw her approaching, I started recording again. What are you doing here, Isabella? I have a right to visit my grandson's grave, she said defensively. The same grandson you called a burden and whose death you called a blessing? I asked. She ignored my question and placed the flowers. As she turned to leave, she said, Deborah, I hope someday you'll understand that I was just trying to help. When you have a healthy child, you'll know real happiness. I smiled coldly. Isabella, I did have a healthy child. Leo was perfect just the way he was. The only problem in his life was having a grandmother who couldn't love him. 6 months later, Ryan and I decided to move across the country. We needed a fresh start, away from the memories of Isabella's cruelty. We found a beautiful house with a small orchard, where I could plant fruit trees in Leo's memory. We also decided to volunteer with families of children with special needs, sharing our story and offering support. On the first anniversary of Leo's death, we received a package. Inside was a letter from Isabella, claiming she had forgiven us for turning the family against her, along with a cheap sympathy card. I didn't read the letter. Instead, I added it to the file I kept of all her correspondence, the same file that held years of recordings documenting her mistreatment of Leo. I learned an important lesson from dealing with Isabella. Some people will never change, never admit they're wrong, and never stop trying to hurt you. But the truth has power, and sometimes, the truth is all the justice you need. Leo would have been 8 years old now. I can still imagine him laughing, asking a million questions, and filling our lives with joy. He was robbed of those years, but he wasn't robbed of love. Real love from those who saw him as the precious gift he was. And Isabella? She lost a family, a legacy, and the respect of everyone who truly knew her. She thought Leo's death would free us to give her a perfect grandchild, but instead, it freed us from her.